Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the University of Manitoba's Tuesdays with TD webinar series, Building Personal Wealth. It's never too early to start. My name is Amy Brake. I'm a proud UM alum and Senior Alumni Relations Officer for the University of Manitoba. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the University of Manitoba campuses are located on the original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you all for joining us and making this event part of your day. Before I introduce today's presenter, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping details. If you've participated in any of our virtual programming before, you know that we like to record them whenever we can and upload them to our website. Our presenter today has been kind and generous enough to allow us to do just that. Even though you are watching live now, you will be able to refer to the recording at a later date as many times as you like, or even share it with your friends and colleagues who may be interested in this topic. We've allocated an hour for the webinar today, including time for questions and answers near the end. Should you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to enter them in the chat and we'll do our best to get to them and address them during the Q&A portion of the presentation. I'm delighted to introduce your presenter, Jeff Myall, TD Canada Trust Branch Manager and 2SL LGBTQ+ Market Lead. Manitoba born and raised in Winnipeg, Jeff attended the University of Manitoba, has worked in the finance and insurance industry for the last 12 years, and has served on the boards of local nonprofits. When not at work, Jeff can be found spending time at the family cabin in Falcon Lake and taking his dog Dax for a walk. In this session, Jeff will cover an introduction to money management, which discusses the basics of budgeting, credit, and basic investing. Welcome, Jeff.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy, and hello, everybody, and thank you for joining the call today. I think I got to share my screen here first, so let's get that on the go. So if Amy or somebody can just give me a thumbs up as soon as they can see the presentation here, that way we know we're ready to go. Awesome. Thank you. So before we get started, just to reintroduce myself, I am Jeff Myall. Pronouns are he, him, his. I am a proud TD branch manager with the Kenniston Commons branch. So if anybody after the presentation also would like to come see me in person, our branch is open from Monday, Tuesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m., Wednesdays and Thursdays, 9 a.m. until 8 p.m., and Saturdays, 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. If any of you are struggling to find time to see a financial advisor, highly recommend you switch to TD. We are open 27.5% longer than the other financial institutions. So we're here and we're ready for you. Now, to kind of get into the presentation today, it is going to be purely focused on how to build your wealth. That's a very important topic. And as Amy indicated, it's never too early to start. And we actually recommend that you do start as early as possible in order to get the growth that you're looking for long term. So let's get into the presentation here and we'll go over a variety of topics. Please take notes as you go because we will open up the presentation for questions at the end. And if there is anything that I move too fast through or anything, that's where we want you to ask for clarification as well at the end, all right? Let's get started. So in our presentation today, we're going to be talking about these 4 different topics. We're going to talk about how to save, the savings and investment vehicles you may want to consider for yourself, the types of investments and asset classes, and then also the types of income that you could earn from your investments. So in terms of kind of getting that foundation and the building blocks overall for creating your wealth, the first step is saving, right? And in order to start saving, you do have to make it a priority. You have to make a budget. And you have to hold yourself accountable, build that discipline around your savings. Really important because a lot of people will kind of go into a savings plan with an idea of what they have in mind. They may have set a budget, but then they don't hold themselves accountable. A lot of times we kind of cave into our own desires and our own wants versus our needs. So suddenly that trip to Mexico in January seems like a way better idea than maybe putting that money aside for the future. And this is where we need to talk about why that discipline is so important. When we also talk about saving and doing our savings goals, we typically have a lot of people think about it in two ways. They either think about the lump sum amounts or those periodic amounts. So when we go through our wealth presentation today, I want you all to be thinking about the ways in which that you might find it easy to save, whether it's doing lump sum amounts or periodic amounts. But quite frankly, the best way is to do both. And we'll get into those reasons why later. So lump sum amounts, those can be sourced from employment incentives, such as your bonuses. They can also come from inheritance or gifts from your family members. Whereas periodic amounts would be set up through an automated, an automated savings plan, where you're either contributing on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis. You can set this up as well with your employer, as they could have some in-house saving vehicles that you could take advantage of. So before we get into more detail about all of those, let's just look at a very simple scenario that some of you may be able to relate to. In these scenarios, we're using the exact same customer, John. And in scenario one, the initial investment amount is $20,000. There's no extra contributions done over 20 years. And the estimated rate of return is 5%. So simple math on that future value is $53,066. But in scenario two, John actually just starts out with $1,000, but then he makes a commitment to that extra contribution of doing $250 monthly, which is that periodic amount. That's holding that discipline over 20 years. By doing that and seeing the exact same estimated rate of return, John will actually end up with a much better future value of $103,444. Now, for anybody on the call, obviously there's some other things in play here. That $20,000 and then no extra contributions over 20 years only works out to about $1,000 a year. Whereas if John's doing it in scenario two, that extra contribution of $250 a month goes out to an extra amount over and above the initial contribution in scenario one. That being said, though, this is why it's so important to do those contributions on a regular basis. Without doing that, John would actually be losing out on a lot of other opportunity down the line. We'll get into the reasons why. But again, a lump sum amount where he started with $1,000 and then held the discipline for $250 a month works out better in John's long-term scenario. So very important to remember that, and we'll get into the reasons why. So when we talk about foundational savings, we also talk about accounts. And in this slide, for example, we have three accounts that you may come across. There's other ones as well, and one of which is not even included in this presentation, which I'll touch on at the end. So for the first one here, we're talking about the Registered Retirement Savings Plan, the RRSP, sometimes also known just simply as an RSP. Income earned within your RSP is only taxable when withdrawn, along with any capitals that are also withdrawn. So when we talk about capital, we're talking about your contributions that you're putting into your account. So another way to explain this account is you have your RSP, you know it's going to be for your retirement. So you are putting X amount of dollars away on a regular basis. At the same time, you're also earning some income back. Until you actually withdraw money from your RSP, that income that you're earning in the account is non-taxable or tax deferred. Then when you get to the actual withdrawal period, which should be during your retirement, that's where you'll be taxed based off your income tax brackets at that time. So RSPs are a really good way to have tax deferred growth savings. For a TFSA, tax-free savings account, this is probably one of the most beneficial accounts overall, in the sense that anything that you earn in that account is tax-free income. So when you put money away based off of your contribution limits, income that you earn in there whenever you need to withdraw is non-taxable income. So really good product to use. Then there's also your non-registered, which is another word for that would be your savings accounts, your everyday savings accounts. So the income earned within the account is taxable in the year that it's earned, and the account can trigger a capital gain or loss when deemed to have occurred or real dispositions occur. So the other way to think about the non-registered account is also sometimes a cash account. So this is where you can put in whatever you'd like. You can have contributions of any amount, but at the end of the day, what you're earning in there will be taxable income. Then the other two accounts that we see a lot of are the specialty savings. So these are the registered disability savings plans and the registered education savings plans. So with the RDSPs, there's no tax deduction on the contributions, and the federal government does provide grants and bonds that could be available depending on your eligibility. For the education savings plans, there are no tax deductions on contributions. Federal government grants and bonds may be available, as well as some other provinces offer additional educational incentives. Many of you may have actually used an RESP from your parents or for family in order to be able to attend school. If you didn't, and I was one of them as an example, I had to save every single year to pay for my tuition. My parents never found out about an RESP. They never saved for me and my sibling. But this is where I want to pass that knowledge on to all of you. If either of you, any of you, I should say, were in that scenario where you had to work and grind every year to pay your tuition, set your future kids up for success with an RESP. You can also set other family members up for success as well. As an example, I have a niece. She is going to be getting an education savings plan benefit from me in the future, and same thing with some of our other family members. So very important. If you are a larger family, you can also discuss with your family members about setting up RESPs for your kids or relatives down the line. One other one that's not mentioned in these accounts, just because it is very new this year, is the First Home Savers account. Highly recommend for any of you that are looking to save for your first home in the future that you do meet with your financial institution and discuss the First Home Savers account. If you are eligible this year, you can contribute up to $8,000. The money that you earn in there, the income that you earn, is non-taxable, and you can withdraw it without taxes again for the first purchase of your home. So a really good product overall if you are looking to save for your first home, and definitely speak with your financial institution for more information on that. All right, so let's get into pension plans, because this is actually a very common topic that a lot of people don't know a lot about. Yet you may end up with an employer that has a pension plan, and some people don't realize there's a lot of differences in the way that an employer offers a pension plan. So the first one, and sometimes considered the traditional type of pension plan, some people call it the Cadillac pension plan. It does depend on how you view it in terms of your overall earnings and income in the future. So the defined benefit pension plan, the DBPP. The future pension plan amount is defined in advance by a formula specific to each pension. A really common way to think about this one is you work X amount of years of service, therefore you will earn X amount of dollars per year for the rest of your life in retirement. So that is usually what the defined benefit pension plan will look like for most individuals. Whereas some other individuals will be part of a defined contribution pension plan, a DCPP. So these contributions are provided by both the employer and the employee, so that your contributions into the plan are known, but the future amount of the pension will not be known until it is received by the employee. So that is where you have to be very actively involved on your pension overall to ensure that you're going to provide yourself with the right level of income that you need to sustain the lifestyle that you want in retirement. There's additional ways that you can also save with your employer if these options are available. There's the Deferred Profit Sharing Plan, the DPSP. This is where you are allowed to share the profits of the company with your employer, so, or vice versa, your employer sharing them with you. Now, that is based off at a certain amount that you may be contributing into the plan, and then the employer may match or provide a certain incentive based off of that contribution. Other ones would be the Employee Savings Plan, so or an ESP. This is where a program is set up by the employer, which allows employees to contribute a portion of their income into an investment that the employer has provided. The savings made by the employee is often matched by the employer and may include registered or non-registered options. So again, if you are working for an employer that does provide these types of plans, I highly recommend you speak with either an HR or benefits representative so that you can find out more information on how to earn yourself more money going forward. Now let's get into the investment types. So again, we went over the types of accounts and the types of plans you could get involved with. These are the types of investments you could hold in those accounts depending on their registration. So a very basic starting point is savings, just your general cash savings. There's usually nominal fees associated with a savings account. It does pay a certain amount of income based off of interest, and you are going to be taxed at your individual marginal tax rate based off of what you're earning in that account. If you were to move forward there, you could purchase a GIC, also known as a guaranteed investment certificate. So there is no fee to buy GICs, and this is primarily across the board for most institutions. You pay an income in the form of an interest payment. And then for your taxes, it is earned and taxed at your individual marginal tax rate. So let's just pause for a quick second and use an example to help everybody understand where we're heading here. So with a savings account, you put in, let's say, $100 and you're earning 1% of interest. Okay, that's just a very basic example of how to earn some investment. Now let's say you take that same $100, but you want to put it into a GIC. It'll have to stay there for 5 years, but you'll be guaranteed an interest rate return of 6% as an example. Okay, so now let's move forward onto bonds. So bonds, that's where the fees, income, and tax considerations will vary depending on the manner and timing in which the bond is purchased. So corporations can issue bonds, governments can issue bonds. A very common one a lot of people will talk about is the Canada Savings Bond. So again, you purchase the bond at a set rate and it'll be sold at a different rate down the line. That's where you can earn some income. Sorry. And then to our next slide here, mutual funds is our next piece. So mutual funds are kind of like that common way that a lot of people kind of dip their toes into the market securities, so to speak. A mutual fund has an array of different securities and investments involved. It's usually a fund of funds. So you'll have like one fund and then all those different funds pooled together to make a portfolio. So you get a very high diversification overall with your investment. Now, with mutual funds, there is a fee for most institutions. With TD, as an example, we have the MER. So the MER is the management expense ratio, which is the cost to own the fund. This charge includes portfolio management fees, operating costs, and taxes. And there could always be additional fees with any type of mutual fund. Some institutions may charge a front-end fee. Some may charge a back-end fee. With TD, we only charge the MER. And in Canada, the MER can be no higher than 3%. So you'll see most MERs ranging in that range of 1% to 3%. Income paid during, in terms of owning the mutual fund, income paid during the year may be a mix of interest, dividends, and capital gains. Again, it is dependent on the mutual fund you have purchased. And in addition, there may be a capital gain or loss upon disposition of the fund. And in terms of taxes, the income is earned each year, income earned each year is taxable, and capital gains or losses will be applied once triggered. And then again, you can hold a mutual fund, for example, in an RSP. So as it accumulates that income year over year, you're not being taxed on it until you withdraw for your retirement income. Same thing with a registered education savings plan, as an example. You can hold mutual funds in there, but there are certain implications to what additional grants you could get from holding mutual funds in an education savings plan. If we flip it over to another example, like a TFSA, you can hold a mutual fund in a TFSA, earn that income, and it is all earned tax-free. So something else to consider if you're looking at your savings options. Moving ahead, so then we go into ETFs and stocks. So these are where you are typically doing either your own self-directed investing, or you're working with a portfolio manager one-on-one to determine your investment solutions. So with an ETF, it operates like a mutual fund. ETFs do charge a MER, management expense ratio, but the MERs for an ETF tend to be lower than a mutual fund. And again, typically because they are self-directed, you're not having to work with necessarily a specific direct mutual fund advisor to guide you on what to do. Income paid during the year will be a mix of interest, dividends, and capital gains. And in addition, there may be a capital gain or loss upon disposition of the fund. And for the taxes, again, income earned each year is taxable, and capital gains or losses will be applied once triggered. So again, if you were holding ETFs in a TFSA, for example, no taxes on that. But if you're holding them in an RSP, it is tax deferred. And then moving ahead to stocks. So this is where you're purchasing, an example, in an individual stock of a company like Apple or Google. So again, fees are one-time fee upon purchase and sale, or account fee. And for the income, some stocks pay dividends, otherwise capital gains or losses upon the disposition. And for taxes, dividends are taxable in the year earned, capital gains or losses will be applied once triggered. So some of you may be sitting here going right now, hey, this seems like a lot of different types of taxes. We're talking about capital gains, we're talking about interest, all of that. We will be getting into all of that in just a moment. So let's talk about the liquidity and the risks associated with different investment vehicles, okay? So liquidity refers to the ease at which an asset can be converted to cash. So how easy is it to have that cash from that investment? As an example, if you hold cash in a savings account, that's what we call highly liquid. You can immediately take that out as cash. Whereas, let's say you're holding a GIC, that's not considered easy or liquidable or easy to turn into cash because it could be fixed in for 5 years. Whereas a mutual fund, while it has higher risk, and we'll get into risk in just a moment, does come with the ease to liquidate easier. So you're a little bit more easy to access cash from a mutual fund. There is a relationship between liquidity and returns on investment. And then again, typically investments that are less liquid tend to yield a higher return as compensation for being less liquid. But then again, it comes with risk. So let's get into that. Risk can come in different forms. There can be inflation risk, which a lot of us are experiencing right now, where the risk of the return on the investment is being lowered by the inflation rate. So, as an example, if I had savings in an account and it was earning 2% right now, that is not beating inflation, where inflation is ranging anywhere between 3 and 7%, depending on the type of asset classes that you're looking at. When we were looking at investment risk, the relative risks associated with some investments over others, such as stocks, are generally riskier than bonds. So again, the investment itself may carry just more risk inherently. Liquidity risk, so again, not having that access to your funds is considered a risk. There could be a time where you are maybe relying on something being for an emergency savings, but if it's in the wrong type of investment, you won't be able to access it as cash right away. And then there's also market risk. So a lot of us have probably heard about the markets. We see the news, but there's more to it than just the headlines. Okay, always remember that. They're the risk imposed by the overall movement of the markets and the potential of the disruption of those markets can have a risk. But that being said, depending on your diversification and your overall risk tolerance, some risk may be good for you, some risk may not be good for you. And this is where that individual tailored advice by working with a financial advisor comes into really important factors in your overall savings strategy. So let's get into the investment income now. So we did talk a little bit about that, and this kind of leads into the tax pieces as well. So with the interest income, so that's the income that you're earning from lending money to a borrower in the form of fixed income securities, GICs, and savings accounts. So again, you're putting $100 into a savings account, you earn 1% on that. That is interest income. GICs also carry the same type of interest income. Now, dividend income is where you are receiving profits from a corporation that is distributed to the shareholders in proportion to their stock ownership. So as a very simple example, let's say you have company ABC that is going to be paying out 17 cents per share. If you own 5 of those shares, you're going to earn that 17 cents on each of those shares. That's the dividend income that you're earning. Dividend income is typically decided every quarter based on how a company is doing. Some companies may pay dividend on their stocks, some may not. So you always want to watch if you are going to be purchasing a stock. If it's dividend income you're looking for, make sure that stock pays that out. And then finally, capital gains. So this is profits from an investment that is sold at a higher price than the original purchase price. So as an example, company ABC sells me a stock for $5. 10 years down the line, that stock is now worth $20. I sell it. I have now earned a capital gain of $15. So that capital gain piece is taxable, but it's also one of the lower tax brackets overall. 50% of that capital gain will be subject to taxes. The other 50% will not. So something to consider in your overall tax and investment strategy while working with an advisor. So we did touch on it a little bit as well. We talked about self-directed investment models versus active management models. So self-directed models are where you are doing your own investing. You're building and managing your own investment portfolio. This is possible through TD, through our direct investing service. For anybody looking to kind of dip their toes into it because they're a little bit unsure, we also have Easy Trade. Easy Trade is kind of like the introductory platform to TD direct investing. So if you're not super comfortable, but you do want to check it out, highly recommend you go with Easy Trade first before graduating to direct investing. This also provides you with the ability to see your portfolio in real time and make decisions as you go. Now, with the active management model, This is where somebody is providing you their expertise and knowledge in managing your overall investment portfolio. It helps lay out and achieve financial goals for you and saves the investor time by researching investments and building a portfolio suitable to you, the investor's needs. Another way to think about this as well is as you continue to accumulate wealth over the years, it will become more complex, whether it's the type of investments that you're looking at, what your tax strategies will be, what your legacy planning could be for your family. At the end of the day, the more wealth you accumulate, the more complex your needs will become, regardless of how confident you may be. It always works to go to an active management model as you build your wealth over time. Eventually, you'll get to a place where you don't want to be doing this. You want to retire. You want to live off of all your efforts over the years. Active management has a very important place in your overall strategy. All right, so let's talk about some other pieces here, and we'll get into the time horizon. So, and actually, sorry, before we get into that, let me just quickly touch on investor profile. So all the different pieces we're about to talk about here ultimately contribute to us defining who you are as an investor, your investor profile. We have to take a lot of different considerations into account when defining you as an investor. Your time horizon, what kind of risk tolerance you have, what your priorities are, what your current knowledge is of the markets, and what that could look like in the future. All of this is really important when we tailor the advice to you. If we don't do these steps, we could unfortunately give you the wrong advice. So it's always important when you are meeting with an advisor for your investment strategy that they ask you these questions and build out your investor profile. So in terms of time horizon, how long do you plan on holding an investment until you need the money? How long do you need your money to last for? When we talk about defining your goals, be as specific as possible. Do you have short-term goals such as buying a house, funding a wedding, travel plans, paying off debt? Do you have long-term goals like planning for your retirement, planning for your legacy? In terms of risk tolerance, you need to know yourself. How much variability in your portfolio returns are you willing to take? Are you feeling uncertain or anxious about the fact that your portfolio is fluctuating a lot? Is it that you prefer to see a slow and steady rise, or do you prefer something that shows accelerated growth with added risk? Also, in terms of who you are, do you need professional advice? So are you speaking with somebody to ensure that you're on the right track and you're putting yourself into a position that makes the best sense for your overall needs? Are you setting priorities? Do you have loved ones under your care, as an example? Financial dependence, if they're depending on you as an advisor, we need to take that into account as well to your overall strategy. Is there a risk to your financial dependence? And then, of course, your investment knowledge. So this is dedicating the time to broaden your investment knowledge. Not everybody will enjoy thinking about investments, researching, hearing podcasts about investment by any means. But if you are somebody that is interested in that, there's a lot of resources out there, but make sure they're coming from reputable sources. So this does conclude the end of the presentation, and I know it seems like a shorter one today, but we find that this presentation tends to trigger a lot of different questions because there's a lot of new terms for many people on the call. So we do allocate a little bit of time more than usual to ensure that we have that ability to answer as many questions as possible. So I know Amy's probably starting to open up the chat so that a lot of questions can start coming in. So by all means, start sending your questions to Amy. You do have us for another 30 minutes to go through a lot of the questions and topics that we covered here in the presentation today. And while those questions are coming in, I'll also just make sure to indicate again, this presentation is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not intended as financial, tax, legal, accounting, or other professional advice to you and should not be relied upon in that regard. As always, please consult with the appropriate professionals to discuss your specific situation. I have to stress very confidently here, if you are planning on investing, if you're planning on retiring at some point in the future, you should start thinking about how you're going to visit your financial institution once per year at the minimum for a financial checkup. Many of you on the call may have gone into a professional service, such as medical, dental, veterinarian, for example. Any of you in the health space would absolutely recommend that your patient visit you at least once a year for medical checkup. As a financial advisor, I'm telling you, please visit your financial institution at least once per year for a financial checkup. It's super important. And with that, I'll turn it over to Amy for any of the questions that are coming through.
Hey, Jeff, we do have a question from Sarah, and Sarah asks, why would you choose an ETF over a mutual fund besides the tendency for lower MERs?
Great question. So typically what we see with the mutual funds and the ETFs is that one is something that is provided in, for example, a branch, something that you would go and seek advice upon and need somebody to assist you with the purchase and redemption of that mutual fund. Whereas an ETF tends to be more found under a self-directed model where you can source what ETF you want to purchase and then purchase it yourself, sell it yourself without having to consult an advisor to do it for you. So that's why the MER will typically be lower on that because it is do it yourself or self-directed.
Okay. Sarah, hope that answers your question. Tara asks, can capital losses in a locked-in mutual fund, RRSP, be claimed on income tax to lower taxes?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. We've never had that one before. Thank you, Tara, for that one. So with the locked-in piece, so again, while it's in a locked-in stage where it is not being drawn on income, any taxes that would technically happen in that account, such as like a capital loss or a gain, are deferred until you're starting to draw that income. At that point, you should still be holding the security. So then when you do sell that security, either at the income stage and there triggers a capital gain or loss, the taxes would apply in that situation. If, let's say, you're inside of your saving period and you haven't actually sold your contribution, like you haven't withdrawn it out of the account, there are no tax implications at that point. It is only deferred. But again, depending on exactly the type of item you may have, I just want to stress, also consult with an investment advisor or a professional tax preparer just to ensure that the advice is correct.
Okay. Still waiting for a few more questions to come in. But I do have a question myself, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of a TFSA, is there interest earned on that? So if I were to put 10 grand in it, will that increase over time or does it stay at the 10 grand?
Great question. So again, with the TFSA, you can hold it in different types of accounts where it could be just like a TFSA savings account where it operates just like any other savings account. You have 10,000 in there, let's say, and you're earning 1% interest. That would be the maximum you would earn. Principal's protected up to that 100,000, of course, if it's in a CDIC participating institution. You're insured for that as well. But then that 100,000 would only earn whatever that interest rate is annually on that account. That being said, your TFSA can also hold GICs, mutual funds, and if you go the self-directed model, you can be looking at ETFs and different stocks and bonds. So depending on what level of comfort you have doing your own investing, you could see it in that way with, again, the stocks and the bonds. But if you are needing the help of an advisor, you'd be going into a branch, most likely opening up what we call a multi-holding account, where you can hold cash, GICs, and mutual funds in one account.
Okay. All right. So then Rohit asks, what's the highest interest you can get through a TFSA account?
That's actually a question I can't answer 100%, Rohit. The reason being is that you could open up a direct investing TFSA with TD, and you can actually purchase other securities from other institutions. So you could actually be earning more interest if you purchased a GIC from a different institution other than TD. There are times that we will not necessarily have the highest possible return, but our products and services are super competitive. Ultimately, if you're working with an advisor, they will guide you on what would be the best solution for your needs overall. And again, there is no specific one time, one shot in the overall grand scheme of things that one product is going to provide you with the best interest. You will want to explore all the different types of investment options that you have. Further note on that, interest income is probably the highest taxable marginal interest income that you can earn. So I highly recommend, depending on your situation overall, that most likely the capital gain situation would be the best because it's usually seen as the more tax efficient strategy for most individuals.
Okay. Any more questions? We still have lots of time. I know Jeff's happy to answer all of your questions.
Yeah, and if you do have another question on anything finance related, by all means, shoot with your question. I'd love to answer them.
We have a quiet group here, I think, tonight, Jeff.
That's all right. While we're waiting, I do have some other things that I wouldn't mind covering really quick with everybody on the call. Just out of curiosity, Amy, how many participants do we have today?
Looks like currently we have 25 on with us at the moment.
Hey, that's actually a pretty good number overall for some of these some days. There's times where we've had hundreds, there's times where we've had five. So this is actually a nice middle of the road number overall for everybody. Something I just want to touch on in your finances, and again, kind of jumping back to that financial checkup piece, it is super important to meet with your bank or your financial institution at least once per year. We have a responsibility to you as the customer to ensure that you are on the right track for your finances and that we're putting you in products or services that make sense to your needs. We have these fiduciary responsibilities. And I think sometimes the media in general, because we're influenced heavily by American media, that we sometimes think that the banks are only out to like sell a product or sell a service. But at the end of the day, we actually have a fiduciary responsibility. We have that duty of care, especially when it comes to your investments, to ensure that these are aligned with what makes sense for you. So please, please come and see us. We are here. We're as TD, as an example, we're open longer than the other financial institutions. So there's lots of opportunity to come in and chat with us. For anybody in the U of M area, your branches around are the Pembina and Kirkbridge branch. So that's just a short drive down from the U of M, or a short bus ride if you're taking the bus. My branch is just down Waverly in Kenniston Commons. There's also the Bridgewater branch, which is nearby, and then also the Pembina and McGilvery branch, which is north of the U of M. So lots of branches in your area. Highly recommend you come and see us. For anybody seeking professional student lines of credit in the future as well, we do have a lot of really good options and quite competitive rates on the professional student lines of credit.
So, Jeff, what type of factors should an individual consider when they are looking for an investment advice, whether they actually go with a bank advisor like TD, or maybe, dare I say, choosing another financial advisor?
Oh, that's it. We got to close the call. No, listen, at the end of the day, when we, just like as a doctor would, you want your patients to have the best care possible. As financial advisors, we want you to have the best financial situation possible. So regardless if that does sometimes mean exploring another institution, at the end of the day, we have a responsibility that you are going to be putting yourself in the best position possible. So I'm not going to sit here and say if TD is the only option. That wouldn't be honest, and that wouldn't be right. But at the end of the day, I do believe, and regardless of what you may think about my biases as an employee, I can tell you right now that TD does have one of the best offerings overall for its customers. And we do operate on terms of that financial fiduciary responsibility and duty of care. Now, jumping back into your question there about exploring different options, let's say that you're somebody who is comfortable doing your own investing. You can absolutely go onto TD's self-directed platform, Direct Investing, and you can purchase securities from other institutions. So even TD is saying, hey, listen, we understand that you want a lot of option and choice. You can still bank with us and still get all of that option and choice. So why wouldn't you, right? So by all means, come and see us to open up a direct investing account. We can give you a crash course. We also have free introductory courses on our website.
Very interesting. Thank you, Jeff.
No problem.
Any other questions? Well, Jeff and I chat away.
Hey, we might be ending early tonight.
Yeah, we still have some time. So if you do have questions, get them in.
Something else to kind of consider for anybody on the call who maybe doesn't get the benefit of a education savings plan contribution to their tuition. Highly recommend that you do come in and see a TD advisor to also start talking about setting up pre-authorized savings plans for your tuition next year. No better time like the present. And I can confidently say that if you start saving now for your tuition next year, you'll be right on track for your overall tuition. Really important to be doing that on a regular basis, especially as you work throughout the year. It's always better to pay yourself first than last. So by setting up a pre-authorized savings plan for yourself, you're paying yourself first, you're paying your future self first. And that's always the most important person. The most important customer at the end of the day is the future self.
So, Jeff, how do those of us that are parents teach our kids how to save?
Really good option there. Really good question. So coming into the bank, number one, to open up a youth account is a really important first step. TD tries to make it fun as possible. Nobody likes to say that finance is the most exciting topic by any means, but at the end of the day, we still want to make it a good experience for the kids. So we do have some different uh, like coloring books and toys and things that they'll be able to choose from to kind of make their first banking experience memorable. But then as we kind of go on throughout the years, this is where I think a lot of parents could essentially get their kids more involved on that. And that's by setting budgets. Budgets is a really good way to show kids, this is how much you're going to need for this, and this is how much you should put away. When I was young, my parents were good enough to kind of show me their saving strategy. And this was long before debit cards and credit cards were so predominant. Even paying with your phone now was not an option back then. So my parents used to, with the way that they would save, they would actually get their money together, put it in different envelopes for different things that they had to pay for, and then manage it that way until technology evolved, and now we have different accounts, different cards, all of that. So there's a way to get your kids involved as a family, and that's how my parents did it. Now, if it's reviewing, the household budget with your kids, highly recommend you get them involved on that. Teach them good money skills from an early age. It's more likely to stick down the line than if you try to teach them right before they're about to graduate and enter university. Getting your money skills on your first year of university is not a good option. That's the one thing that where my parents did not do good, was teaching me about credit at a young age. I got my first student credit card when I was 18, and also my first student line of credit. My parents did not teach me really well about credit at the time, and I thought using my student line of credit for a stereo system would be a wise option, which it was not. So just highly recommend that you get your kids involved not only on the savings piece, but also on that credit piece from an early age.
And for those that are interested, we do have on our website, the University of Manitoba Alumni website, we do have a session on credit. So you can look at that if you have questions about credit. But moving on, John does have a question. He says, can an international student be eligible for a student loan?
Yeah. So to a certain degree, and it does depend on the program and the type of residency that you do have. In most cases, it will come down to the type of program you're entering in, and then what your actual expiration date is for your student visa. So highly recommend you do meet with an advisor at one of the branches to kind of go over what your situation is and what you might be, what you might be eligible for. In most cases, undergrads will be eligible from anywhere from a 10,000 to 20,000 student line of credit, with certain amounts being accessible each year. Now, it does depend again on your residency overall and where that falls into. With temporary or international students, there can be some requirement for security or collateral to be on record there. But it will depend as well if you have a cosigner or not. Sometimes family is in the country with you and they're able to cosign depending on the type of income that they're earning. So highly recommend you do meet with a branch representative.
All right. Do we have any more questions? We're getting a little closer to our time. Doesn't look like it. Well, I think we can maybe end it there then. Thank you, Jeff, so much for delivering this really thought-provoking presentation. And thank you everyone else for joining us today and asking some really great questions. You can register now for the next Tuesdays with TD series webinar that's on November 21st. That one will be on first-time home buyers. And in the next few days, there was a question on this in the chat. In the next few days, we will send you a copy of this recording of the webinar. So please feel free to share it with your friends and family and colleagues. We'll also put it on our website so you can continue to view it at later time. And we're also going to send you a quick survey. So if you could have some time and take some time to fill out that survey, we would be greatly appreciative of that, as it really helps us in determining what our next webinar series may be. So thank you, Jeff, for taking the time to spend this evening and teach us all a little bit about savings. And I hope that everyone has a really great rest of their evening, and we see you back next month.
Thanks, everybody.